So today we're going to talk about tables and charts. But first, okay, last week we talked about navigating Excel and understand how Excel stores dates and times and some shortcut keys and how to start building a formula, how to copy formulas down, generating lists of months or numbers, how Excel does that automatically. Today, first over, we have some carryover questions. There was a person that asked about a shipping placard. That is it possible to create something like this in Excel where you can easily replace various portions of it? And right now I'm going to switch to the shipping placard, and you should have received this file. And basically this is what they sent me. And I did a little bit of work here. Notice here it says PO. And if you look up in the formula bar, it says is equals PO and D1. So now all I have to do is change this number in D1 and this PO number will change. Likewise, when it says and space, 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 and D2 of and F2. So this is 3 of 10. So if I change this to 4 of 10, now this becomes a shipping placard for the fourth box. Here is where we did a Vlookup. And what I did is I just made some imaginary data over here. I'm going to spring over. If you go over to column Z, here's a table. And here's some items. And there's the number. And there's another number that's an internal number that's associated with it. And there's a description. So what I did is I made this a named range, and I called it items. And if you look up here in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, when I highlight that range, it says items. That means it's a named range. So now coming back over here, I did a VLOOKUP. First of all, I did this, cancel. First of all, I did a data validation. So if I go to data and data validation, I said this, I'm going to pick from a list of numbers, and that list is going to be from Z5 to Z10. So now if I click the down arrow, I can pick one of these numbers. And notice this number changed and the description changed. That's because this is a VLOOKUP. Now I'm going to switch back over here for just a minute to the PowerPoint. So we're going to talk about how a VLOOKUP works. VLOOKUP is the way to find a value in a table and return another value on the same row, but in a different column. So this is the syntax, equals VLOOKUP. What value do you want to look up? And number 2, where do you look for it? And what column are you looking to return a value from? And then what kind of match do you want? Do you want it to be an exact match or an approximate match? Now, if you say approximate, it's going to give you the next largest value from what you are looking up if it's not there exactly. So most of the time we're looking for an exact match. So we'd use 0. For those of you who are computer geeks, 0 and 1 are always used in programming as 0 equals false and 1 equals true. So we're saying for 0, we want an exact match. In other words, we want the approximate to be false. If we say 1, we want the approximate to be true. So VLOOKUP always looks in the leftmost column of the range that you call and returns values from columns to the right. And for efficiency, the values in that leftmost column should be in order from smallest to largest or alphabetical. Okay, we're going to go back now to the spreadsheet. And I'm going to stop right now and say, am I moving too fast?
It looks like Doug Williams does have a question. Doug, go ahead and.
Nope. No, oh. Sorry. I just joined.
Okay, no problem.
All right. So now we see here what I've done here, and Excel has a function called formula text. And if I write this equals formula text and point to D4, it will give me a text of what the formula is. So I've shown you here what this formula is. And actually I can drag this down. Well, actually the formula doesn't apply here, so I can just delete that. So this says equals Vlookup D3, that's this value, or actually this value. I'm going to look up D3 in the items, and I want the second column to be returned, and I want it to be an exact match to that item number. And what it returns is 3560 in parentheses. And then the second thing is the description equals VLOOKUP D3 again, and items again. And this time I want the third column returned, and I want it to be an exact match. And if we go over here, there's the second column, 3560, and there's the third column, cinnamon buns. Okay. And then what I did is I just put those over here. If you look at this, this is equals item number, and the ampersand is a concatenate. It means I'm going to paste strings together. So I'm going to paste item number and whatever's in D3, and then I'm going to put a space and whatever's in D4, and then I'm going to put a space and whatever is, and then I'm going to put a dash and then whatever is in D5. So now this says equals 011090034, which is 3560, the internal number, and it's cinnamon buns. If I change this to the first one, now this automatically changes to the right item number, the right internal number, and the right description. And likewise here, I've said equals a pickup date of, and here I had to use a special function. This is an Excel function or expression called text, and it will return this value, and it will give it this format. Now, if I did not use this, it's going to return, if you remember from last week, dates are stored as numbers. So if I did not use that text function, here, actually, I'll just show you. If I just replace this with D6, it says the pickup date is 44/180. Well, that's 44,180 days since 1/1 of 1900. So that doesn't work too well. So I want to convert that to a date that people can understand. So I use the text function. And the first thing in the text function asks for is, what do you want to convert to text? And the next thing is, what do you want it to look like? Well, I want it to look like month / day / year. And then I close the parentheses. And now it says pickup date is 12/15 of 2020. Hopefully whoever needed that shipping placard. Now, the next thing I did is I highlighted this whole area right here, and I went to page layout, and I set this at, I hit set print area. So now when I go to print this, it's going to go file, print, and you see all that's printed is just that area that we had highlighted. And now I said, I want to fit all rows on one page. So now all I have, this has already shrunk it down to fit all the rows on one 8.5 by 11 page in portrait orientation. Now, hopefully that clears up that question. The other question that was asked was using EO month to find other days other than the last day of the month. Well, I can find how many days until the 15th of the month by using a formula that looks like this. Equals date value, month A3, and 15, which is the 15th of the month, and year A3 minus A3. That's going to tell me how many days between the 15th of and the date that we have in cell A3. Now, if I want to know the days to the end of the month, it's very similar. So I want the EO month A7, which is this date, and then 0, which means I want to go to the end of the current month, minus the 15th. Again, this date value of month of this date and the 15th and the year of this date. So that tells me that from the 15th of the month of December until the 31st is 16 days. Hopefully that can tell you how to do a little bit of date arithmetic.
Yeah, and the good thing, sorry, John, just for a second. And the good thing about this is, yeah, this formula may look a little scary to some people, especially people who are just kind of getting into Excel. But once you know what you need to accomplish and you either Google it or have the formula, now you can just copy and paste that formula and you know what it's going to be accomplishing each time. It's days from the 15th of the end of the month.
Right.
So that kind of will make it a little less scary once it's all set up and going.
If you recall from last week, this date value is something that we can create a date from a string. And that's actually what we've done here. We've got the month from this date, and we added the 15th to it, and then we added the year to it. So if I were to evaluate this formula, here's another important thing. If I go to formulas and evaluate this formula, it will evaluate it one step at a time. So it says the end of the month for December of 2020 is serial number 44196. Now, if I were to convert that to a date, it would be 12/31/2020. And then if I evaluate this, the month from this date is 12 and 15 and slash, and the year from that date is 2020. So now I have a string that says 12/15/2020. And if I evaluate the formula, it's going to give me 16. Now, I'll warn you ahead of time, if you write this formula the first time, it's going to come up with a date. So if I go back up and change this to short date, this is what it's going to come up with. So you have to change this value to either number or general. And general format will just give you the actual arithmetic without any formatting. Okay. Hopefully that answered the questions. Does anybody have any questions about what we just did in either one of these? Okay, I'm going to say that silence means assent. So let's go talk about tables. Why tables? You may or may not know what a table is in Excel, but if you have a table, if you start typing in a row below a table, that row is automatically included in your table. Now, if you think about that, that's kind of important, because if you're always adding data to a spreadsheet and you want to include that data in calculations, using a table is a very easy way to do that. Also, if you start typing a column next to your header row, Excel adds that column to your table. Now that can both be a help and it can be frustrating if you're trying to put a formula outside the table. So if you're going to put a formula outside the table, you really need to step over 2 columns to put your formula in if you don't want it included in the table. If you enter a formula in a column, Excel automatically applies that formula to the entire column. And now that's a setting that you can do. We'll show you that. And most importantly, if you're using a pivot table, which we're going to discuss, it's a special kind of table we'll discuss later. Based on this table, the data is automatically added to the pivot table when you refresh the pivot table. So if you're doing like a dashboard or a chart based on a pivot table, if that pivot table is based on an Excel table, then data that is added can automatically be updated in your charts. And formulas can be written using a table name and the header name, and we'll demonstrate this in the workbook. So let's say, what is a table? Tables are a special format in Excel that makes organizing and manipulating data much easier. A table consists of a header row with titles, followed by any number of rows of data relating to the header content. So I'm going to stop right now and go back to my other workbook, which is basic lessons. And I'm going to go here to a simple table. So here's something from the HR. It has a hire date, it has the first name and the last name and their salary when they were hired. Now, this is not a table yet, but I could calculate all these things with some formulas. Those formulas are a little long and involved, but we're going to show you an easier way to do it with tables. So now I'm going to go back over here to create a table, we're going to click anywhere inside the data and click Format as Table in the Home ribbon. So we're going to go back over here. I click anywhere in here and notice this says Format as Table. Now, when it comes up, you see all these different bandings. That is the hallmark of a table in Excel. So I'm going to use a common one here. And I don't want to include that stuff on the left or on the right there. So I'm just going to used my shift key and my arrow key to only highlight the data that I want. So everything inside the dancing ants is going to be my table. And notice down here it says my table has headers. It's really important if this first row is what describes each column of data, you need to check that. And that's checked by default. So I'm going to click OK. And now I have a table. So I'm just going to continue in here. You're going to see what I'm doing in the PowerPoint presentation, but we're just going to continue in here. Notice when you convert this to a table, you now have a new ribbon up here that says Design. So first thing it says is the filter button is checked. That means each column is filtered. And by filtered, we mean if I click this and only click, let's take Smith, I will only see the Smiths. And to unfilter that, I just hit clear filter. Okay. I can also filter on numbers, and I could say greater than 100,000. And that shows me all the people with salaries greater than $100,000. I'm assuming this is a year. Okay, and we can clear that filter. Now, the other thing that happens in here is says the first row is the header row. That's default because we said that when we created the table. And we wanted banded rows. And the reason we have banded rows is that just makes it easier to read. So if I want to, particularly if the table is many columns wide and I want to make sure I'm looking at Joe Jones's information, I can just stay on this line and scroll over and find the information. So I'm going to go back to inside my table, and now I can click on this design tab up here. And you can designate the first column and the last column, and you can band columns as well. I'm not going to do that. That just makes it confusing to me. All right, so now I'm going to show you one of the nice features about a table right now. Let's say I enter a date, and remember, the easiest way to remember today's date is Control semicolon. Notice that added a row to the table. It automatically turned the banding on, and it is now ready to assume, let's say Mr. Finley, John, and my salary is, I'm retired, so my salary is $25,000 a year. Okay, so now you can see that we've automatically added to the table just by beginning typing here. The other thing I can do in the design is to give the table a name. And this is going to be pretty important. One of the things that the table name should make sense, but one of the things that is easy to make you do with the table is to use a standard naming convention. So table names cannot have spaces. So to indicate a space, I'm going to do an underscore, and I'm just going to put higher data. Okay. Now this table is named TBL underscore higher data. Okay. And we'll show you why that's important in just a minute. Let's go to anything else. Now, if I don't want this to be a table anymore, Excel allows me to convert it to a range. And if I have duplicates in here, I can remove any duplicates in the table. But you want to be careful here because, yeah, I have several Smiths, but they're not all the same person. So you would want to make sure that the duplicates had the same first and last name. And I can also resize the table. If I want to manually add rows or columns, I can resize the table. Or let's say I've deleted a bunch of rows from my columns, I can resize the table and make it smaller. Okay. So let's go back over and see where I am on my presentation. Went through the design ribbon. One thing that we didn't cover is summarize with a pivot table. We're going to do that later on. And now we're going to go to writing formulas with tables, because this is where they get really good. So I want the total of all the salaries of all hired before 2011. So before 2011, what is that? Well, that's before 1/1 of 2011, right? So I'm going to equals sum if, and the range that's going to use for my criteria is going to be table higher data. Notice that that comes up. And now I use a square bracket, and notice it says, which column do you want to use, John? Well, I want to use higher date. And then I want to say less than, notice this is in quotes, less than 01/01/2011. And then I have to end quote. And now I want to know what's my sum range. Well, my sum range is TBL, again, higher data, and then my square bracket, and I want salary. And now I close parentheses to finish my formula. And there's the total of all salaries of people hired before 2011. Now we can check that. We can do our filter and check off 2011 and 2020 and only check 2010. And then highlight this. And if you look down on the very bottom of the screen, it says sum 1,292,693. And that's exactly what we have here. So I know that that's correct. So I'm going to select all now. Now I want to equals count if table hire data, open square bracket, employees named John. Well, that's the first name, right? So first name. Now I don't have to use equals if I want, if I'm using an if formula, count if, sum if, all I have to do is just say John. And it says there's 5 employees named John. Well, is that true? There's John Smith, John Biden, John Ellison, John Frederick, and John Finley. So that's 5. Now, how many salaries are greater than $100,000 a year? Equals count if TBL hire data. I can just double click that, hit my square bracket, salary, enter the square bracket, comma, quote, greater than 100,000. That's 100,000, correct? Enter an end quote and my closing parentheses, and it says there are 7 salaries that are greater than $100,000. And we can check that again with our formula. Number filters greater than 100,000, and there they are, all 7 of them. Again, if I highlight these and look at the bottom, it says count is 7. And the average is 120,065. And the minimum and the max, you can change these. We'll show you how to do that later if somebody really wants to know that. But this is pretty much the standard that you'll get with Excel. Yours may look a little different. You may not have minimum and maximum. Okay, and clear the filter from salary. Okay. So one of the things that I did back at the beginning, this may be something that you would like to do, and something I will send you before the next thing is how to create. I know how many of you have spreadsheets that have more tabs than you display along the bottom. You have 15 or 20 tabs in your spreadsheet. I'll send you a little program that creates a menu of your tabs, and you would just click on the tab in this menu like I did here. If I click this, it goes to my simple table. And this is how that works. This is a hyperlink, and it says I'm going to go to A1 of the simple table, and that's how it does it. So let's see how we do that. I'm going to say go to sample data. I click on this and click insert ribbon and link, and I want to go to a place in this document, and I pick sample data and click OK. Now, when I click this link, it goes to my sample data. I'm going to stop right there for just a minute and see if there's any questions.
There was one question about the first formulas that we were doing.
Sure.
The last formulas. They just wanted you to click on it just so that they could read that.
Well, here, let's
So
do this. If you do this equals formula text. All right.
Okay, there you go.
Now you can read those formulas. Now, if you use some other name besides table higher data, you could use just table underscore data or whatever you want to call it. But if you have multiple tables in your spreadsheet, it's really important that you have them named that makes sense. So in this case, this is higher data. I may have another table that says promotion data or sales or whatever. But whenever you type the TBL in your formula, it will show you everything that starts with TBL. Okay. Oh, I'm going to leave that up just in case somebody's still copying. And remember, up here is where we put the table name in the design ribbon. Sum if, count if, average if. Those are all all functions in Excel that generally people that handle data use quite a bit. So anytime you're using an if formula, like count if or sum if, then always the value following the first comma is, if it means equal to that, you don't have to use the equal signs. You just type what you're looking for. If you're looking for greater than or less than, it always has to be enclosed. Now, John's enclosed in quote here is because we're looking for a name, John. If we were looking for a salary, we could just put that number. Okay. Okay. Now what I have on the second tab of this is some sample data. This is from a company I used to work for. I've taken the company names out. And this is order data, which some of you may deal with a lot. And anytime you see this little red triangle in the corner of a cell, that means there's a comment. So if I hover over that, it says, John Finley said, add a column after this one to capture the city. So that's what I'm going to do. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to make this into a table. And my table has headers. Good. Now I'm going to add a column. Notice it already gives it a name. That's because every one of these headers have to have a name. So it defaults to that. And I'm just going to call this city. Okay. So I'm going to show you how the table automatically copies a formula. Equals mid. This is a string formula. I want to capture everything after this dash right here. So I want mid of sales name, comma. Then I'm going to use another function in Excel, search sales name for this character. And I'm going to start at the very first of the string. And then I'm going to add 1 to that because I want to go the character actually, I want to add 2 to it because there's a space after that. So I'm going to add 2 to it. That will get me the first letter of the city. And then I don't know how long it is to the end, but if I put a large number here, like 256, it'll go all the way to the end. Oh no! How about if I just put 25?
So that's interesting. That evaluate, it runs the formula and it tells you where the problem is in the formula.
That's right. Evaluate tells you where the problem is. And for some reason, it didn't find the dash. So let's just copy that dash and we're going to put it in our formula. Equals mid this, find Control V, put that in quotes. Find text. Come on here. Within text here, start at the beginning, +1. Actually, we said +2, didn't we? Comma 25. Oh. So evidently that dash is not your standard dash.
Okay.
And how I fixed that was I copied the exact character that was in there. And so now what we've done is we've created a city column that takes the city from each one of these company names as to where they're located. Well, not only did we add a formula to Excel, we learned how to troubleshoot that formula.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so now let's say I'm going to save this for the next time because we've gone on about 40 minutes now. So I'm going to stop it at this point and we can take questions, and I'll go back to my camera. Actually, I'll just leave it on here.
So one question that I had coming into this from one of my customers is they have a report that is exported from their ERP system, an SQL server, and it's pulling over a lot of records, like 1 million records.
Right.
And it's just the spreadsheet keeps crashing because it's got so many lines in the spreadsheet. And she was just kind of in a pinch for getting some things done before the end of the year, and wondered if there was a way to maybe.
Yes,
I don't know
there
if you've
is a
handled
way. There's
Okay.
a way to do it without loading it in your spreadsheet. And it's called,
Okay.
well, there's actually 3 things. You can use Power Pivot, Power Query, and Power BI.
Okay.
So those are all new features of Excel. If they don't have them, all they have to do is search for them and they'll get added to their. But if everybody's using Microsoft 365, you'll have it.
Mm-hmm.
So in Power Query, I can go over, there's some good tutorials over there on Power Query. What Power Query will do will load that download from the SQL server into memory, not into the spreadsheet, and we'll
Okay.
do some calculations, and you can set up calculations and do charts and graphs from those calculations without actually having your spreadsheet tie up so much memory.
Okay. I'll have her look into that then.
Yeah, Power Pivot or Power Query, either one will do those.
Okay.
John, we do have a
Yes.
comment from Steve.
Sure.
He said, one thing I found helpful with the table, especially large ones, is the freeze panes functionality.
Yes. So I have this large table here. If I want, there's two things that we can do. I can go to View, and this says Freeze Panes. I can do two things. If I always want to see the first column, I can hit Freeze Panes. And this starts this right now. And now as I go down, I can always see my headers. And as I go to the right, wrong thing. Sorry, unfreeze panes. I need to go here and freeze panes. Now as I go to the right, I can always see the sales ID. And as I go down, I can always see my header. The other thing you can do, and I'm going to unfreeze, the other thing you can do if you just want to freeze the top row, you can freeze the top row, and now as you go down, you'll always see the header. That is very handy if you're using a large table. And if you're got not so many rows, but you got a lot of columns and you want to freeze that first column, you can freeze the first column. And that's in this view ribbon. The
John,
view
we got
ribbon,
one more question.
Sure.
Please go over the mid formula again.
The mid formula again. Okay.
That's the blessing.
Okay. What the mid formula does, it says what text, the first, now, well, here, let's just do this in, well, equals mid. What text do you want to look in? And then after the first comma, where do you want to start? And in this case, I wanted to start, it's a variable location. So I wanted to start 2 spaces or 2 characters over from this dash character. And then the last, after the last comma, you put how many characters you want to go over. Well, if you put 25 or 30, now I could put 256. The reason it was erroring out is because of the find. So if you put a large number here, like 100, 256, it'll just go to the end. But let's say you weren't looking for something in the middle. Notice all these, I'm just going to copy one of these out and put it on the next page. Control V. That was Control C and Control V. Let's say I want to know what's the first 2 numbers after the zeros. Well, notice it's SO 0000. So that's 4, 5, 6 characters. So I could say equals mid this, and I want to start on the 7th character because the 6th character is a 0, right? And then I want to return 2 characters. And that tells me that my first 2 numbers are 47. If you have a long string and in the middle of it, it has a number, you can look for it in various ways. There's all kinds of ways to look for it. I just have to have an example to show you how I would look for it. So
All right.
if
We have a couple-
if you do f of x on the mid formula, it'll tell you what text do you want to look in, where do you want to start, and how many characters do you want to return. So that's anytime you want to know about a formula. Likewise, if I were to use equals right, this is going to give me how many characters to the right of the end do I want? Well, I want the last four. 47, 45. And likewise, equals left. How many characters on the left of the text do I want? Well, I want the first two. SO. Left, right, and mid. Anytime you're dealing with text, and a lot of times when you get downloads, SQL downloads from a large database, you're going to have text. And if you recall, in last week, we used those to calculate a date from a text.
All right, we
Any
got a
other
couple more.
questions?
Yeah.
Sure.
Can you freeze a column and the header or first row together?
So can I freeze a column and the header? Oh, see, if you freeze the column and the header, that's freezing panes. So if I freeze panes, that freezes both the first column and the first row. Now,
Okay.
if I want to freeze the first two rows, I just change it. If I want to freeze the first two rows, I place this on the second data row and hit freeze panes. Now I'll always be able to see the very first row 2, which is the first row of data, plus the header. And as I go across, I'll always see this column.
Excellent. All right.
Okay.
Next one is, what formula would you use if you wanted just the name without the city?
Oh, just the name without the city?
Yeah.
Ah, that's a good one. So let's go back to this and let's insert a column, and we'll call this company name. Now remember, we had to find what this figure, this thing was. So I'm just going to go in and copy that. That's not a regular dash. And that's quite often happens just like this. This was a download from a database program, an ERP system. So I'm just going to hit that and hit Control C. I've copied that now. It's in the clipboard. And now I'm going to say equals. Actually, what I want is everything to the left of that character, right? So equals left this, comma, length of this minus find, quote, Control V to get my character in there, and sales name, comma, 1. Now I don't want the space before that, so I'm going to say -1. All right, let's go to our formulas and evaluate the formula and find out why. It's 29 minus find this. Oh, okay. Okay, I see what I did wrong. So let's start this again. equals left. We just want to find this character. We don't need the whole length.
Did you paste it? Remember you had to paste it?
I had to paste that character in there.
Gotcha.
And now I've got the company name. And you can see what I did. I said I wanted the leftmost portion from where we found this character in that text -1. So that stepped over one character from where we found the dash and said, that's the portion I want to return.
Excellent, Steve. John, thank you. One last one. What was the formula you used to display the formula in the adjacent cell?
Okay, that is formula text. If you type in formula text, then you point to the cell that you want to see the formula from. So I'll just do that right here, equals formula. And notice when you type in the word formula, it comes up with formula text. So you can just double click that and say, I want to know what formula is in there. So that's pretty good. If somebody sends you a spreadsheet with a bunch of formulas and you want to know how they got there, then you can display the formulas and kind of look and see what they're doing.
That was our last question. Thank you very much. You did a great job.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was good. We are going to have this recording out ASAP because I know there's going to be a lot of parts in here that I'm going to have to look at a couple times to make sure I have. But that was really clear direction and great stuff. So thank you again, John.
Bonnie, I did see that you have your hand raised. Did that answer your question? I'm going to lower the hand unless something.
Okay, she said yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Gotcha.
Well, we really appreciate y'all again for attending today. We have the last Excel class of the series for this year. We're probably going to do another one next year. 2021 webinars are in development, and we'll have the full announcement coming up. So we have one more next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Make sure you're there. We're going to go into even more depth, and you can. And John will be sending out the same spreadsheet again, so you can tag along.
And we're going to talk about lookups and pivot tables.
Perfect. Yeah, pivot tables I'm really excited about.
And I don't know who it was that was asking about the large data question, but I will send you a couple of links that they can go to get some information on how to do that.
Perfect. I'll get it over to Shane.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate y'all and appreciate you, John, and we'll get that out to everybody, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.